was based on the lectionary readings for the 24th. Genesis 45, 3 through 11. Psalm 37, 1 through 11, 39 through 40. That was in the lectionary. And Luke chapter 6, verses 27 through 38, which were in the lectionary. Lord, help me to keep my thoughts on Thee, that I may hear Thee speaking in my heart through Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. The readings for the seventh Sunday after the Epiphany seem to have a common theme. A theme of forgiveness, of reconciliation, of not dwelling in hate and the wicked, of faith in God because God trumps all, no pun intended. These readings seem to be a precursor for the events to come with their narrative of loss, time of trial, forgiveness, reconciliation, and then ultimately redemption and salvation. In Genesis, Joseph gladly welcomes and forgives his brothers for their vile treatment of him years earlier, and in fact seems to be comforting them. Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. Interesting thing to say, isn't it? Joseph seems to be telling his brothers that it's okay that they sold him into slavery, because ultimately it was part of God's plan for his people. How many of us could do that? Give solace to those who cause us pain. How many of us could let go of our own anger, our hatred, and the desire for vengeance against those who had wronged us? In Psalm 37, we are told to refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Do not fret, it leads only to evil. And in Luke 6, it says, love your enemies, do good to those that hate you. Now, I don't know about you, but these words sound really good. But how in the world can we turn off the anger and hate to follow those words? There once was a person in my church that I did not like even a little bit. Everything about this person rubbed me the wrong way. I did my best to avoid any conversation or contact with them because I knew it would end badly. Well, wouldn't you know, this person got into some trouble and came to me for help. It kept me up night and day worrying about how to help, or even if I was going to help this person. What had been done was so wrong to a child that I felt whatever punishment was doled out to this person was exactly what they deserved, and maybe even more so. I dislike this person that much. Now, do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Wow, those words from Luke really hit home hard for me. How do we not judge those who we see do wrong? How can we not judge those whose hateful speech, practices, and policies inflict harm upon the most vulnerable? How are we, the almighty, all-knowing Drew University activist community that we are, uphold social justice? We uphold social justice for immigrants, for LGBT communities, for racial and ethnic equality, for gender and age inequities. How do we uphold the directive not to judge? Surely we don't expect these words to apply to us. Oh, but they most certainly do. Even though his brothers had sold him into slavery, Joseph loved, forgave, and consoled them because God sent him ahead to preserve life. Sound familiar? God sent his only son to die on the cross so that we could live, to keep us alive in spite of our sins. God sent Jesus ahead to do the hard work for us. we fit into this? While upholding the rights of those whose civil rights are trampled upon and fighting for the oppressed, the downtrodden, the persecuted, the indigent, and those less fortunate than we are, can we find it within ourselves to forgive and love those who are perpetrating the injustices? Or do we revel in the anger and the outrage, use it to fuel our sense of doing good, righting wrongs, being judge, jury, and verbal executioner in the name of what's holy in our self-righteousness? Do we become what we hate? Now, Luke says, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. Matthew goes on to say, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Do we forget the words of the psalm to refrain from anger and forsake wrath? For the wicked shall be cut off, but those who wait for the Lord shall inherit the land. Do we forget or only consider when convenient Luke's words that we are to be merciful, just as your Father is merciful? Do we forget, as the psalm says, if we commit our way to the Lord, trust in him, and he will act? Now, the bad folks will get their reward for their behavior in due time from God. We must not fall into the trap of forgetting that we are all God's beloved. All of us. It isn't easy to love those who do wrong. But that is exactly what we are called to do. The cup of Christ is not an easy lift. It's heavy, and it requires us to do and act in some ways counter to what we desire or what we feel is justified. Forgiveness, love not hate, reconciliation, faith in God. As we enter in a few weeks the season of Lent in preparation for Easter, let us think about the times in our lives where we were faced with each of these and how we responded to them. Let us think about how we can love all of God's beloved in the face of trial. And most importantly, let us remember that this is what we are asked to do. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.